you've got a player, and we all know the impact that mental mistakes have. Most of us have lost games because of mental mistakes. I was talking to one coach today, and he said every game he'd lost was a mental mistake.
Right.
And it feels that way a lot of times. But you've got a kid who makes a mental mistake, and his tendency is to make 3 or 4 more.
Yeah.
How do you coach him out of that, or how do you help with that?
Well, again, part of it is a little bit of the same strategy we use at the start of the season when we say, all right, we might be 0-1, we might be 0-3, or we might be 3-3, or we might be 2-2. How are we going to approach it when that happens? And so while you do it ahead of time, that gives you some tools by thinking through, well, if it goes really well, I mean, how do I keep from falling off the ledge because I'm overconfident? How, if things are going great, or if things are going really poor, how do I have that hope? We already kind of touched that. Yeah. What's similar as I coach young men, some are stronger in the mental game than others in terms of allowing a mistake or allowing failure to magnify itself and determine the next play because whatever reason, but they just aren't as good about dealing with it. They have not had as much success dealing with it. I had a quarterback one time that had a real, just outstanding skill set, and he could put a team on his back and carry them. But it was one of those guys that he had to have success early, and if he didn't have success early, he tended to go the other way, and it would tend to fall off. And so one is I had to have those conversations with him and go, look, you're not very good when you don't feel good about yourself. And he would admit that when he's not in a bad place.
Right.
He wouldn't want to say that if we were, already there. And he's like, yeah, but I would tell him how great you are when you're in a good place. When you're confident and when you're operating that way, how you can put our team on your shoulders and it feels like you're leading us. But I said, now listen, we're all going to make a mistake. You can't play perfect. How do we keep it from going the other way? How do we keep you going in the positive way and confident? And we kind of talked through that. And I'm not saying we always had a good answer for it, but one, deal with it ahead of time. And then we always talked about, all right, let's get reset or flush. That was a phrase we used a lot. Just flush the last play, and you got to go the next play. We got to repurpose it. And then I know you've talked about some of this, but I told you recently I saw a Major League Baseball guy that had shared a tip with younger players that one of the hardest things for him was to not allow errors to accumulate, to continue to make the next one. And he said whether it was something from the batter's box or out in the field, but if I made an error, he said I literally took my hat off, and inside the bill of his hat, he had drawn a circle and wrote reset. And he called it his reset button.
There you go.
And he said, if I take my hat off and I look at, I'm just resetting again to get back in. Well, whatever the tool is, that's all I'm asking that quarterback to do is, look, dude, that was an awful throw. You just threw it to them. It was a pick six. Now, we can either spiral down the drain here, or you can go, all right, flush it, reset, and let's go the next play and it takes practice, in my opinion. This is not something just because you say it happens.
Yeah.
But you have to practice it. And then over the course of time, I would even tell you that that's one of the things I learned to actually practice in practice, was to have situations to go that this didn't go well, or maybe I gave them a bad call. I became the referee and made a bad call, and they thought they won the game and they didn't. And now you got to go do it again. Can you reset and do it again? And then if it doesn't work, we try to have a debrief of going, all right, what happened here? You see how when we didn't get refocused and reset, that now this turns into a real disaster. That's my practical response. So tell me a little more.
So that's great. I think there's a general kind of reset that all of us need. And I think that's sort of a universal brain science activity. The great players have learned how to do that themselves. Steph Curry, for instance, goes back and redoes his shoes when he feels like he's out of the zone. He'll go back and put himself through some basic kinds of things Most athletes have something, most basketball players have something they do at the free throw line. Baseball players have something they do with their gloves. All of those are habits that try to get their brain back to that place where we're operating on repetitive muscle memory, right? And there's actually a part of the brain where that functions best. But individual players are going to have to learn that, just like you said, so you're practicing it. One of the things you've also talked a lot about is competition and the impact that competition has even in practice. Part of what you're doing with that competition is you're trying to build resilience. So we're not just doing this drill to learn the skill. We're doing this drill to learn how to, when I mess up, flush it and do it right. Right? So everything I'm doing ought to be directed towards that brain functioning well. We know that athletes are more than just their brain, but there's not an athlete that can play well unless his brain's functioning.
Well, we've also known, and you talked about it being contagious, just a couple of years ago, OU softball team, and you'd hear them refer to the term eyes up, or they'd have a finger that they'd point. It wasn't just a celebration. It was a reminder to their teammates when their teammate had a bad play or their teammate had something go wrong. They're like giving the buzzword to help them reset. Look, we're still in this together. Eyes up, let's go. And so my best experiences have been where we can help one another by, whether it's even me and a coach or me and a player or a player with me. Hey, coach, eyes up,
player to
reset.
player.
Yes, 100%.
Right? So you want your players to develop the ability to help one another regulate. So a lot of times it's tough when I'm the one that's made the mistake to hit the reset button.
Yes, correct.
That's maturity. Sometimes, though, that's what a captain's for
100%.
or a teammate's for.
Yes.
Hey, we're watching that next play.
Yes.
And developing that culture is part of developing championships.
100%. And that's where, though, the more we are intentional about developing that culture, and again, it starts with who we are, the people that we get to influence, whether we're a head coach or position coach, but that's just got to be the contagious thing that we share with people instead of the, man, when things go bad, if I wear my body language of negativity, what can I expect from every young man or woman that is under my leadership? And so, gosh, we've got to own that.
Yeah. So what you've described is a culture. Here's my goal. I want this kind of culture. What are the pathways to get to that? Well, it's building this competition. It's building this regulation before we get 0-3. It's having these strategies that get us the pathways towards those goals. And then I'm going to be building these relationships so that I have the ability to maintain the motivation to get there. That's the science of hope. You've hit it.
Well, can I add to just a little bit to that resilience piece? You enlightened me so much one day because that's why we condition. That's why we do hard practices, because we're giving them controlled doses of that trauma. I don't think about it as trauma. When I'm trying to get you to run gassers or to run sprints or to how many can we do right now, but we're doing it in a controlled setting. And I'd a lot rather you fail today and us begin to build that resilience so that when you see something real in a game or in life, you're now more prepared for you to succeed.
That's good. Yeah. Controlled doses of stress, it builds resilience. And part of the way that those players are going to handle that as controlled is if they trust you.
Yeah.
And if they don't know if you're going to actually kill them doing this,
right,
then it becomes real severe trauma. But if they know that you're trying to get the best out of them as a coach, and you're pushing them, and you're gonna protect them, but you're gonna push them, then that failure or success is going to build that resilience.
Part of that hope that you're talking about comes from having the wisdom, even if maybe practice didn't go like I wanted it to today. Maybe we didn't succeed like I wanted to, but for me to be able to remind them that this is part of the process. This is why you're going to be successful on Friday or later on this year, because
as a
we've
dad.
already gone through this now.
Yeah.
And now you've seen that, yeah, it didn't work perfectly when I allowed this to happen, but that's why we're going to remind each other and we're going to hold each other accountable to continue to go to the next play. The next play matters, or the next decision matters. And I think we can learn from that. But part of that is don't quit teaching. I mean, just because things don't go well, let's continue to teach and to give them the hope. Oh, you mean we can still win even though we had a bad practice? Absolutely. Because we're going to learn from this.
Yeah, that's great. That's the reason you're building championship players, and then they're becoming championship kind of husbands and fathers down the road. So thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you. It's been fun.